Please help me welcome our speaker, Danielle Wallace. Danielle is the CEO and Chief Learning Strategist at Beyond the Sky and Beyond Role Plays. She is a dynamic presenter who is no stranger to our virtual stage. So, Danielle, we are so delighted to have you back, and the session is all yours.
It is so wonderful to be here and to see familiar faces and new faces. We're going to have a lot of fun with today's session. And importantly, though, we're going to be unpacking some ways that you can really make your messages stick for really sticky learning. To get us started, I'm going to jump right into you sharing an example. Put into the chat an example of an ad, any ad that you might remember. Where's the beef? Oh, like the good old classics from Wendy's. The Mentos Fresh Maker. Oh, the Budweiser ones are such. Oh, Apple 1984. We got some really good classics here. Francesca Old Spice. I used to work on we'll get into that in a second, but I used to work on antiperspirant deodorants. The Got Milk campaign. Oh, these are like enduring. Lindy, speaking of Budweiser frogs, and Betsy the Marlboro Man. What's really interesting is these are very enduring ads. Yet you can remember these. Some of these ads are 20, 30 years old. Wait, why can you remember this? Why is it in your brain? Your brain on drugs. Why can you remember it now? Really interesting. Really interesting. So we're going to unpack this a bit more, whether we can remember it not because we're old, Rachel, but because there's some key themes within all of these that we are going to be unpacking. Like Trisha is saying, that emotional connection, maybe that conciseness of text. And where's the beef? This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. This will give us the lens for which we can be able to have our session today. And I'm bringing this to you as I started to allude to it, former marketer. So I am very sorry to say that I made you buy more Doritos, made you buy more Olay, more Old Spice, made you have your behaviors change with messages that were really sticky that you couldn't get out of your head. I'm now fortunate to use this for the forces of good to create effective learning solutions, where me and my team have the privilege of working with organizations across North America. So I want to I want to bring to you actually some of the techniques that marketers use to make their messages stick. So we collectively, as learning and development, can do the same with our learning solutions so those stick. In particular, there's a few of those techniques that are of most relevance to us as learning and development professionals. The first is the idea of using visuals to depict your message. Secondly, is the idea of concise text. Thirdly, is the power of emotions, as Trisha had mentioned. And fourthly, is humor. Within many of those examples, there's that, as Lindsay's saying, there is that humor aspect to it. And we'll get to these today. In particular, I'll be using a lot of video examples simply because they work well within this medium that we have of a webinar. But the same principles apply to any learning solution, no matter if it's a virtual class, an e-learning, or even more AI powered solutions. These are the enduring techniques that allow us as learning development professionals to pull all these techniques into our programs. So with that, the first one that marketers do really well is depicting their message with visuals. And you've spoken to some of these visuals, brain on drugs, as one example of that. I'm going to show you a different one. So watch this video, and I'm asking you a question at the end.
You get used to pet odors in your car. You smell nothing, but your passengers smell this. Eliminate odors you've gotten used to for up to 30 days with the Febreze car vent clip.
Wow, it smells good in here.
So you and your passengers can breathe happy.
And sorry if remembers this one.
You get used.
Interesting that we'll bring up the first poll. Um, and we'll unpack why this is effective. And interesting because Sarah does remember it. Casey remembers it. I'm sure this is unique. They're remembering an ad for Febreze. So what makes it memorable? Is it that the problem is depicted using images? Is it the words are used to clearly describe the problem? It's a realistic scenario. Or the tagline is concise. Put through to the chat. Looking for everybody's participation here. And Sarah speaking to one of the things that we'll unpack a bit more, that analogy and making her think of the Dumb and Dumber films. Yeah, that's some of the analogies we can hook onto. So we've had sufficient results. Would love to get the poll tally, Casey. So yes, you're clearly seeing that it's the problems depicted using images. And pretty amazing to have this overbearing, you can imagine it's a smelly sheepdog that's retaining these odors that then our product, in this case Febreze, is the solution for. It's effective because they've literally dramatized the idea of smells overtake your car. And this is designed to engage all of our senses, even though it's just a visual, so we can actually connect to the solution and the problem. So how can we do this though as a learning and development professional? So these are great marketing executions. What can we actually take away? So each image and interaction is carefully designed within our learning sessions too to convey the needed meaning. This is where the tips and tricks are that we can take away. Firstly, it's this idea of the messages sticking with the learner, and it doesn't even require a long piece of content. In fact, actually, if you notice the amount of text and audio on that, it's very, very concise. Similar with the, this is your brain on drugs. Very concise text, very powerful images. This all helps the audience understand the message faster. So when we're doing this, as we've alluded to, there's ways that we can make the visuals of the concept come to life. So the first one is using analogies. Great example shared earlier about this is your brain on drugs. It is literally an analogy. Or the sheepdog overtaking your car smell. It's literally an analogy. This becomes a really low cost, free way of conveying the concept. Secondly, because it is the concept that we're dramatizing, it is the concept. Looking back to that example of your brain on drugs from earlier, for those who aren't familiar, it had, from my memory, it had regular eggs, and then a fried egg. So they're trying to depict the concept of you could fry your brain if you're taking drugs. So the concept is being dramatized as opposed to what I'll share with you soon with learning development examples of people working or, random other anti-drug visuals and campaigns. It's the concept that they chose. And then thirdly, within all of these, one tip to use is just to think about how you can replace words and just Google. Use ChatGPT. Use something to help you think about concepts that allow us to replace words. Many times within our learning solutions, let's say perhaps we're doing a course on risk. What are some visuals we can use to convey that concept more? Perhaps it's a shield, as an example. So I encourage you to challenge yourself to replace the words in your concepts with visuals. Here are some examples of how to do this. This was one that was for D&I training. Any ideas what this concept could possibly be conveying? Just put into the chat any ideas. Eliminating people. Erasing gender, as Gail is saying. Erasing the gender gap. Breaking gender norms. Removing gender bias. Or erasing gender neutrality. Yeah. These are all great ways that we can convey this message of, erasing the gender lines. Erasing gender identity. So, and I didn't give you any context at all. You were actually able to derive that simply because of the visual itself. We've done this with other examples. Again, here's an example of an analogy when we were doing product training. The idea was increasing everyday consumption of chips through meal occasions, like Tostitos, but literally here we have, chips for dinner. Other ways are using diagrams. So rather than a standard, here's a course, there's a random image of somebody working, I think we're all guilty of that. Instead of the ways that you can use diagrams to better convey that point. In this case, a diagram actually helps uncover the concepts and their interrelation to each other. So overall, there's many ways we can use to actually uncover visuals that further our concepts. Love you to put into the chat how you have used visuals to depict your training message. What went well? Or if it didn't go well, what might you do differently in the future? Yes, too many images can be confusing. That's a great point. That's why it's the intention of using visuals with purpose. Everyone had a different reaction to the image or wanted different. Yeah, we see that. That is a good point. That is common. Irrelevant images are hard, definitely. Use images that relate to the concept. That's actually the key thing. That's the key theme we have here. Sarah's talking about using visuals that relate to the interaction itself. And then Ed's picking up a really neat idea of storytelling. So painting the picture with words. So using storytelling. So being very deliberate about images to convey the message there. Showing interconnected, Michael speaking about impacted individuals and showing the interconnected spheres. So that's a great way of being able to show actually the interrelation, and you could also potentially show the impacted people in each group. So you literally could have a concept, as I'm thinking on the fly, of conveying that message. Otherwise, yes, Joanne, great idea of roadmaps, diagrams, flowcharts for complex content. All of that really helps not just you conveying your message, but helps the learner understand it, which is what our goal is. That's what our goal as a learning professional. We actually want to change behavior and imbue skills. So keep those coming. Lastly, Betsy, icons instead of words. Yes, we can take lots from the world of from a learner experience, taking from the UX UI design field to help use visuals for a very intentional purpose. So besides having visuals depicted, marketers successfully use text or copy, as it's called. So in the marketing world, I actually only had so much space on a bottle of Old Spice or Olay when my brand team redesigned those packages. The choice of words is so critical. Hence, think the idea of compelling, concise copy. I'm going to share an example of a nonprofit marketing organization, which was part of a multi-channel campaign. It's deliberately, some of these examples are deliberately very low cost examples. They're Canadian examples for people, I think it's Gail, Anna, Andrea, Joanne, Jillian in the chat who may appreciate the lower budget for many of these examples. This particular example, research uncovered a powerful insight that smokers who intended to quit have often tried and failed. And it was actually this fear of failure that was holding them back. What they didn't realize is it could take as many as 30 attempts to quit smoking before they could become successful. And these failure was actually just part of the journey. I'm going to share with you a snippet of this multi-channel campaign. As I do so, pay careful attention to how the words are used to describe the concept.
We needed to help Canadian youth understand that when it comes to quitting, failure is the only way to succeed. Our integrated mobile-first campaign led with a high-energy social video showing a woman battling through her failed attempts.
When it comes to quitting smoking, failure is an option. So fail all the time. Fail hard. Fail often. Fail, fail, fail.
This was supported by social posts, mobile banners, and posters near regular smoking spots, all promoting the idea of failing.
So what are your thoughts on how the text was used in those ads? Here's some images that were from those campaigns. Michael is saying this idea of failure is turning failure on its head because we're so used to seeing failure as an option. Those repetitive message, Joanne, saying a fail, fail, fail. That as Andrew's saying, the tech was almost challenging the person actually not to fail, which is actually quite ironic in that. So the text overlaid in the images provided really clear, as Gail is speaking to, and as Sarah's also speaking to it, it normalizes. So it's making the normalization a failure, really keeping on its head, as Michael was saying. And further, he's saying this idea of capitals and the boldness, very deliberate, is designed to actually ignite action and make that message stick. And it worked. So visits and time spent on the Ministry of Health site dramatically increased. Quitting resources grew from 12% to 28% with the campaign, and 69% of people who saw the campaign were significantly more likely to seek out information compared to 38% who didn't. So from a database standpoint, they're able to think about the text on this campaign done in a very deliberate way to help ignite action and really go into the theme, as Betsy's concluded with. It allows you to fail without being ashamed. It gives you permission. So how can we, as learning and development professionals, use this idea of concise, compelling copy? The first is the idea of stopping power. So when I used to create out-of-home ads and in-store ads when I was at Procter & Gamble, we had a robust framework. One of the parts was this idea of stopping power. So it meant that literally as I'm going down the aisle at a grocery store, if I could be stopped with an arresting set of copy of text, stopping power. So whether the creative execution and the visuals together depict this, it actually is done in a way that arrests and captures attention. Secondly, is this idea of less is more. So jargon and excess text is rarely useful. If you can understand it, people need to understand things in the 1 second. Yes, the 1 second they might have while they see a billboard while driving on the highway. They actually need to have this concise text. This idea of less is more is so critical, especially within learning and development. And then lastly, as I alluded, the idea of jargon, it's rarely appropriate in the best of times unless you're in a heavily regulated field. And even then, it feels like you're trying too hard. The intent is to use plain language to help the learner understand and act upon the concept so they can actually acquire this information. So when we put this all into a learning development lens, this looks like a threefold. First is the idea of the keep it simple rule of copywriting. Go through, ruthlessly eliminate words like really, that, very, without mercy. With large language models and many of us having sanctioned uses of Copilot within organizations, this should become easier than before. And I do urge you to ensure it still makes sense for the learner. Keep it simple, making sure it still makes sense. Secondly, the TMI rule of copywriting, which we could have a great benefit from in us as learning and development professionals. Focus on the need to know, not the nice to know. Often our courses get bloated with subject matter experts insisting on what if the learner wants to know this and this is interesting. This becomes a product of our creative ingenuity and our learning consulting skills to work with our subject matter experts to derive at what is needed to achieve the performance outcome, and that succinctness is critical to this. I had a conversation yesterday with a subject matter expert on this very thing, and we were able to slash a lot of the nice to know, which would have otherwise bloated a course and becoming ineffective. And who wants to create something that's ineffective? Lastly, is this red pen rule of copywriting. So once you've written it, get out your red pen and delete 20% of it. The objective is to delete a significant portion of this, because then you'll be left with something that drives retention. So, and often I make my team take up 30%. And that example from my conversation yesterday with that idea of the red pen rule, we were able to really slice through not just excess filler words, but what is the core that is needed. And it really helped us reframe what was needed to achieve the learning objectives. Altogether, these create a course that has compelling copy and actually ignites behavior. Here's an example. So in this before example, and this was in a pop-up in an e-learning, the excess text was added. The after example, it's the same concept with much more concise text, and noticed how we use visuals to be able to depict that message. But I'm curious for you, what have you been doing to um, drive this whole idea of concise, compelling copy? Because this is pervasive. We bring up the second poll. And I'd like to get a sense from you is because sometimes it is out of our control, and sometimes there are things we can control within our focus. So for you, is your main concern in your training trying to have concise text? Or perhaps it's actually just to have jargon-free language. For others, there's the best benefit from having simple explanations. But lastly, what I also see is can be challenging. Sometimes we, as learning professionals, need to understand the content sufficiently in order to write it clearly. Put through the chat where you see the most concern for yourself. And then I'll answer some questions we have in the chat here. So Joanne brings up a common question. What do you do when compliance and legal get involved? And sadly, more is more is more. I think many of us have been in that situation, or as, and I'll get to Jason's in a second. So often what I've been able to do in my conversation yesterday was another example of that. What we end up, so practically, what we end up doing is based on the dynamics of ourselves and stakeholders. In this particular case, we are including the nice to know information in a PDF. We've done this in the past with other clients where it's a beautiful infographic of nice to know information in a PDF. Stakeholders are really happy as information is included. I know actually including it would detract from learners being able to retain the right message. So we ended up with this great happy medium where learners were able to achieve the performance goals, which is my intent and the organization's intent. Yet the stakeholders, especially when we had others involved, were able to get what they needed from their compliance standpoint. Other questions. Oh, yes. And we can bring up the poll results in the meantime. As I'm seeing Natalie and others comment, yeah, it's this idea of understanding the content sufficiently to write it clearly. And it's interesting because the poll results of these always change over time. I echo that. What it means for us as learning development professionals is to ensure that we are adding value, we're driving the performance goals. Sometimes it does mean it is some extra effort not to just simply take what is created and then put it into a way, like even using a large language model, or not, in order to a way that's succinct. Sometimes we actually need to understand the content a bit more. What that happens in my situation and my team situation, we end up with some more conversations with stakeholders, or we end up with some research on our own time to ensure that in our effort to make it succinct, it still has the right context that's needed. So it's concise, compelling copy, but we're not removing the context that otherwise it just doesn't make any sense. Oh, yeah, and Wolfgang has it. Like, if you can't understand the concept in a sentence, you haven't understood it. Quoting from Albert Einstein. There's lots of chats. I'm going to tackle a few and then we'll keep moving. Rachel's echoing the subject matter experts leave everything as need to know. Yes, that's when our learning consulting comes into play of being able to help them understand and work with them as stakeholders to achieve the performance goals. acronyms. Acronyms, as Gail is speaking, is a common thread. Again, it's being mindful of your audience. So being mindful of that, your learners, do they actually understand the acronym? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. So it's being able to ensure your compelling, concise copy is meeting those learner needs. And as Jason's saying, as a counter argument, sometimes it's helpful you're not the subject matter expert, that you don't understand the concept. So you can see it new. And Jason, yes, that speaks to the context that is often missing in our drive to create compelling, concise copy. It's not just content, it's the context as well. So that becomes such a critical piece of this message being visually depicted, compelling, concise text. But marketers go a step further. They harness emotions to successfully have messages that stick. And Tricia had mentioned this in the beginning of some of the ads that really stuck. It was this idea of emotions. I'm going to play an ad, and I'll ask you your thoughts on it after.
I'll always take care of you. Hey, little bear bear. You gonna be a good boy?
Don't worry, doll, about the rest of our life.
From this stage.
Through thick and thin,
Come on, baby.
I'll be there by your side.
Oh.
I'm gonna love you forever.
Hey, bear.
I'll be there. You don't have to worry.
So, who is getting choked up here? You can use the reactions emoticon. And there's a couple people, Michael, Rachel. Thank you for sharing that. It's making you cry. You can put your chats to everybody. And we'll all feel this collective thought. Not crying, but crying. And this is a 30-second commercial. It's tugging at our heartstrings, as Gloria is saying. Oh, and it just is so sad. If we see something that actually compels us, and I'm sure many of us have actually seen this. For those of you who couldn't see the ad, Sonia, we can share the YouTube clip for it. Oh, and John has a nice piece here. If you've ever had a furry family member, you know what this is like. And for others who don't, you can see through the eyes of the pet. You can actually see that experience. So it gives us this common ground with which to relate to, because it's very deliberately focusing on our emotions. And for those who couldn't see it, we put it into the chat for you. So it's effective because it uses emotions to dramatize the learning point. So it's intentional because emotions are on what they want you to remember. In this case, that your furry friend is part of your family throughout life. So everything is designed to reinforce that, being throughout life, being there with your key life moments. Everything is designed on that. So when done right, emotions in training can be really heart or mind opening. They help you think about the concept in a new creative way, and they are the product of your creative ingenuity. I'll share with you some examples from a learning and development lens. Here's one on an animal protection course with a simple stock image with some deliberate use of a grayscale. Here's one that was used as part of an onboarding program in the company culture module.
Wouldn't it be nice to start again? To press a button and reboot everything? To rewrite your story on a fresh sheet of paper? To reset life to a time before money controlled everything? Before the missed payments, the regrets, the overdue notices. Before debt took your life. Wouldn't it be great to start over again?
So I'm curious how you've used emotions in your training. Um, have you used emotions? Do you have empathy? Empathy can come through. Oh, Rachel speaking, but a very clear one is helping the clients, like the impact of the work that her organization does. So that not only drives to the culture and the mission, like the examples I shared, but it also helps drive the what's in it for me for the learner. Why should I take this training? Um, Andrew uses shocking visuals to understand the impact of not following safety rules. Yes, you got emotions. They're tied to exactly what you want people to remembering. Follow safety. That works because they're so in key. Others using quotes and images, as Mishan's using, or even the idea of using high impact visuals as they help people to understand whether it's the frustration of a task, as Anita is saying, or whether it's to convey that this mutual interdependency, as Annalisa is saying. Um, and sometimes they can become even a motivational video testimonial. Again, as it connects to what you want people to be doing, learning, and such. These high impact emotions can be conveyed through visuals, as Carolina is speaking to. So I encourage you, the central theme in this is think about using emotions in training, but do make sure they are connected to the concepts. So when done right, you actually remember the message that is done through. Lori's saying sexual harassment T video is the best video ever, and nobody forgets it. Yeah, I've had some other high impact videos that really help drive action along those lines. And as Lauren's saying, is because they're either realistic scenarios or they're done in a way that's very deliberate to convey emotion that helps ignite action and how you're intending to ignite action. In this case, as Lauren is saying, realistic scenarios, using characters to represent our patients. So then your learners can see themselves within that scenario, whatever it is you want to ignite as a feeling, whether it's empathy, Lauren, then your scenarios can convey that. So we spoke earlier about emotions, and there's one emotion I'm asked how to do the most. It's humor. And in short, I'll say do so with purpose. I'm going to share an ad and think about how humor is used in this.
I finally found affordable car insurance with Desjardins, so I can quit my second job.
Hey, do the dance!
My second job was so much worse.
Great rates for young car owners.
I have 2 degrees.
Because you have better things to worry about.
So what was good or bad about how humor was used? So put down what was good or bad in that short clip of this person that's I'm showing here on the screen. So relatable, second job. He's dressed up like pizza, Michael. Yeah. Joanne's saying like, I'm not sure, how humor is here. Don saying it's sad, pathetic. Yeah, it can be degrading a pizza delivery job, as Virgil's saying. A sore subject, TJ's saying. So we're all like resonating on, as TJ and Carlita and like Carrie is saying, where we can relate. I mean, it's not great because we're just making fun of somebody, as Annalisa is saying. But we can relate. But I want to pick up a theme that Dawn, Bernadette, and Bonita shared earlier within the last section. They raised the comment of a great ad, but Lauren's saying it right now. I got lost with the pizza costume. I nearly missed what they were advertising. Hmm. So, yeah, interesting point. That's brought up earlier and then bringing it up now. I'm like, oh, huh. So, hmm. A better example, I would say, of humor maybe is that Febreze nose blind commercial I shared earlier, because it was connecting to the benefit. And that's a challenge here. Um, so Carrie's like, yes, we collectively figure out their audience, definitely those older millennials, been a very relatable piece, but perhaps it's doing humor for the sake of doing humor. So, which is what I'm doing with this image. There's like actually no reason to have a child in it, laughing. So is the humor on the learning point? So it doesn't matter if the humor is entertaining if people don't remember the main message or the takeaway of it. So we don't have funny things in our training just for the sake of being funny, um, especially as we collectively as industry have a lot of us have moved away from in-person training where there's more latitude. On your slides, as an example, there's like a lot less aptitude and acceptance of just humor for the sake of humor. So consider, is the humor on point or is it just overpowering? Um, And in this note, do people remember what this was selling? Pizza? It's a great key visual of pizza. Joanne's like, no, I don't remember. Cars. Yes, maybe it's cars. So if a few of us are remember have a better understanding of what it might be, but it's not obvious because the humor is on two jobs and dressing up as a pizza man. Instead, a better way of using humor is to have it focus on that learning point. I'm going to share an example. But just to echo that concisely, as Rachel's saying, it doesn't matter if the training's entertaining, if the learning point is not memorable. And we see this very often in advertising. So when we do look to the world of marketing, there's a lot of really, really bad examples out there. So it also helps give you a more critical lens as you're looking out into the world. Um, and oh, yeah. And as Michael put into the chat, there's ways that people are using humor, but like they have to be about the main message. So I'm going to share with you a ad from the UK. It's about a company that sells glasses. So we might not be familiar with the company, but they sell glasses. And think about how humor is used with that context.
Oh, what? Sorry, mate.
Looks heavy.
Delivery.
This says block 2. It's over there, mate.
So, any thoughts on how humor was used in that? It's definitely a pivot, as Lori's saying. Andrea and Don really like it. Mayhem, going back to the other one, Mayhem Allstate is a better use of humor that's closer to the car insurance. And Adam, amazing that you can actually, without any prompting, that actually came up in your head. Like the message was visually depicted with enough humor that a solution to a problem came up. It was that memorable. Bonnie's picking up a key thing here. When humor is used, there's actually lots more that goes around it. And we'll share this in an upcoming webinar. There's very intentionality with the music and the pace and tone. So Bonnie's saying the message is I could walk 1,000 miles, perfect for this type. As Kimberly's saying, this is still relatable. Everybody knows that feeling. Um, and as Virgil's saying, it shows the struggle, this difficult journey with no payoff in the end. Classic problem, which then this product is the solution. Um, and they did a good job of creating the character and story within a short time frame. Again, techniques that we can also use. And actually, I want to pick up a theme, an unintended theme that TJ's picking up on is just, by reflex. We see a commercial, we actually disengage. We don't pay attention. Here's a secret. Your learners are doing the same thing. So we need, as learning development professionals, to ensure that we're maximizing the value of people's time. Humor works on these because there is the conceptual payoff. We like these ads. They're actually they're actually fulfilling to us as the audience or to your learners because it connects the problem to the solution. We are visually depicting through humor a solution. So that intrinsically feels rewarding. That's why it becomes deflating when you see things that feel like a waste of time or another video that's a waste of time or the myriad of ads, which absolutely are a waste of time. When they don't have that right connection to the concept, that's what creates this disconnect. When done well, as Sonia's saying, it actually helps us take action. Oh, yeah, I need to go to the eye doctor, which is exactly what this commercial is trying to do without even directly telling you. So if we as learning development professionals can borrow from the marketing world to take these influence principles to convey action within our learners to help them actually be more safe at work, to help them interact with patients in the way that's in line with our organization's values, to actually take the actions we need as leaders and managers, then collectively we are using these marketing principles for the forces of good to create real skills done effectively. So when you think about humor, you really should be thinking about using the concept in a new or more memorable way. And as mentioned, it's rewarding because it's capturing, sustaining the viewer's or audience's attention. And here's an example of this done well in the learning space. So as you watch this video, think about humor is used. You may also know how the message is visually depicted and how there's concise text, as we discussed earlier. And also, I think Deborah had mentioned the idea of emotions through music. Think about all those things, and there'll be a poll at the end. So an oldie but a goodie. That's from Kathy Moore. So as you see that, what did you like about how humor was used? If I had dime every time I saw that, as Sarah saying. Oh, Rachel's saying, I felt seen. Like this is so relatable to me as an audience. It was very, I mean, Laurie, Gail, everybody's echoing that. And Jessica's really reacting to this visual of the learner smashing her head with a laptop. What's lovely is all these examples, intrinsically within all of these, they are relatable. So I've picked things that people can relate to. And Kathy, in her case, she knows her audience. Done with different audiences, people don't understand. But because, as Lori is saying, being the trainer and the learner, this hurts. I get it. This hurts. So when we look about some of the concepts that we've seen so far, think about how words are used and how visuals are used. So we know that's relatable. Dawn mentions the concise text of repeating blah, blah, blah. And Wolfgang remembers that there's only 2 words, save us, which is significant because that was like a 15-second clip, and yet Wolfgang remembered those words. Lori's speaking to the visuals being effective. Jason's like, where is the skip the test button? So relatable with our audience. The music really added to this, as Caroline is saying. But you think about emotions on this. She is using humor. We know it works not just because it's relatable. That's table stakes within any learning solution. We should ensure that we know our audience. What's working is, well, please put into the chat more that you think that were working. Maybe unpacking a bit more what was said. So we've got the relatable, being in the situation, as Betsy is saying. And it's effective because there's the concise words and the drama is all about the message of saving the world from boring training, which is what actually comes up in the next section. Oh, and actually Mariah mentions that, the training is boring. So this is coming through. It's just rewarding because it's humor and it's connected to the concept. Again, that becomes the critical piece, why this learning piece is useful. So I'm curious to get a sense for you. Have you used humor in your training? We'll bring up poll number 3 for this. So as you bring up poll number 3, think about, yes, I've used humor, or, maybe no, it was too risky. No, but I like to. Yes, and it worked well. Ah, yes, but only I got the humor. Don's liking the humor in my random image. Um, and it's relating to the last piece. And actually Laura's reacting to, yes, we felt this sense of annoyance. Um, so as we bring through the poll results, want to get a sense of how you have used humor in your solutions. Maybe you can put through the chat as you've used humor, what it's been. And because many of us, 49% of us actually have used humor and it's worked well. But as Lauren's saying, it can be hard, like in this healthcare space, it can be hard to be humorous. Yeah. Humor is easy to do wrong, I would say. And as Paige was saying, used it was well received, but the subject matter experts hated it. Yeah, humor can be hard. Or vice versa. Subject matter experts love humor. I've seen this, but the leaders don't, and the learners actually sometimes they don't care. It's rewarding for learners when it's connected to the concepts. So we've gone past the days of showing comics within our learning solutions, especially now we've moved more digital. Here's a fun comic. We've moved past that just to maximize people's time, learners' appetite. It has to be effective. It has to connect. It has to actually drive the outcomes you were intending to drive. Other things that have worked well, little hints of humor. It can be fun, like creative names for imaginary cities and example scenarios. Or taking a song, as Marilyn is saying, changing the words to fit the message. The juxtaposition can become humorous. Other successful examples are um, Anita's example. You didn't go to law school to learn software application. That whole theme might be setting up. It sounds like it's setting up something. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it's visually depicting with humor the problem that then you're solving with something that's probably a lot easier. It doesn't take their time. So that's nice because it's connecting to your concepts. Um, and ooh, Gail has a really interesting point. So using humor in face-to-face training as facilitator to react to learners, to expand the point, make it memorable. And again, face-to-face, we have a lot more latitude and you can read the room, you can read your learners a lot better. But interestingly, to the point I mentioned earlier, the same day, Gail got both positive and negative feedback on the same humor. It can become difficult. Again, best humor is really connected to the learning concepts. So overall, we've seen practical ways that you can apply tips that marketers use to make their messages memorable into your next training program. We've looked at visually depicting the message, using concise text, harnessing the power of emotions, and grasping with the difficult motion of all, which is humor. I'd love you to put into the chat what's one thing you want to be remembering a year from now. So when I see you at the many events that ELB is at, I can ask you, hey, how is that one thing? What is that one thing you want to be remembering or perhaps taking away and applying? So we have this idea from Lauren of using emotions effectively. Staying relatable, as Andrea's saying, which is the underlying theme, and it should be our learning solutions should be based on the concepts of understanding our learners. Joanne speaking to what we spent a lot of time on is visuals to convey instead of text. Likewise, Caroline speaking to cutting out words, getting out that red pen, um, and being much, much more concise. Betsy's picked up the idea, the more sophisticated idea underlining this is when you have something related to the concept, that's what you want to have your focus on. That's what you want people to be understanding, whether it's your visuals, your emotions, your humor, even your concise text. Sandra's taking away a very practical piece that many of us can. More visuals, fewer words. So I urge everybody to have this practical example of replacing complex definitions with graphs and flowcharts like Sandra is. Or even taking that first step, like Anna is, to connecting with emotions. Whether that using visuals like Jennifer's doing and Sonia is doing, or whether it's a more fulsome approach. Altogether, what we have here is ways you can take an entire concept or even just one thing. I'm just going to cut out my words with my red pen. Any of these will help make your messages stick. And with that, I would be happy to share further ways of doing this within the video format. You can scan the QR code for that. It's just like a fun little video. Or I also unpack a bit more of how these concepts play out not just now, but also into the future with the podcast of You in 2042, the future of work. And then lastly, I'd be happy to answer any questions on LinkedIn, where I'm actively dedicated to helping us as an industry be able to gain the skills we need to be not just following where things are, but to be charting our own course as an industry to ensure that we are always remaining relevant. Just like our relevancy within their examples today, I really want each and everybody here to have that relevancy. So us as an industry will continue to be that powerhouse. Thank you so much for your fabulous participation, the nonstop chat, and I really look forward to being able to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. That's another great session. We appreciate your insights so much. And thank you all for joining us, being here with us. And like Danielle said, with the nonstop, amazing engagement in the chat. Before we head out, please take 30 seconds to fill out that survey that'll pop up on your screen right after we wrap up in just a moment. We really value your feedback, and it's the best way to let us know if you want to take advantage of that free strategy session. And it's another way to get in touch with our speaker. Please join us next Thursday for the penultimate session in our Women's History Month series. We have a great panel lined up with speakers from brands like Microsoft, and IKEA, all about career growth and L&D. So be sure to register for that one and bring your questions. That registration link is in the chat now. We'd love to see you next week, and we thank you so much for being here today.